Welcome back to this edition of Devils in the Details presented by WSU Sports. I'm your host for this week, Jonathan Haidt, joined alongside by my co-host Ryan Henry and Joe Matthews. And today we have another very special guest here in our Devils podcast, the one, the only, the Bratt Pack, who's been making waves all over social media and the news recently. So it's perfect time to have him on to talk about all of his experiences, rooting for this, 12 game in a row winning Devils team. So, Brad Pack, first and foremost, how are you doing before we get underway here?
I am doing amazing. Thank you guys so much for having me on here. I'm really stoked. I've heard so much of WSOU throughout the years. I know I mentioned it before we got on here, but as a big heavy music fan, I've been to a lot of concerts and shows that have been sponsored by the station. And as an alumni myself, have heard so much over the years. So I was really excited to get this offer. So thank you guys for having me.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that you've had this connection with WSU in the past. We're glad you're still listening and having you on. So we'll jump right into it. So first and foremost, before we even talk about the words Jesper Brad, I want to ask you first. Going back, years ago, we want to ask you first, how did you become a Devils fan, and kind of what were your first couple of memories, when you first joined the Devils
Yeah.
community and Devils Twitter specifically?
Absolutely. So I became a Devils fan really, really young. I was very fortunate and lucky as a kid that my dad's employment had an abundance of Devils tickets at all times. So he used to take me to a lot of games as a kid. I think my earliest memory is when I was like 5 years old going to a game, and we were sitting in front of the press section, and they came out for the T-shirt toss. And as a 5 year old, just jumping and screaming like, over here, over here. And one of the newspaper journalists behind us like tapped my dad on the shoulder and was like, hey, like they're not going to shoot t-shirts over here, like we have like our computers and stuff, like this is back when the journalists were in the lower level. So they gave us like a program and a bunch of stuff, and I got to like look at all the players. And I remember going to the Continental Airlines Arena a ton as a kid. Even the Stanley Cup games, I remember showing up to school late the next day because I was at a the 2001 Stanley Cup against Colorado, and in '03 against Anaheim. So it's been a really, really long journey for me. And I actually kind of fell off a little bit and was more of a casual fan for, a, a, I don't know, close to a decade, really. And around 2017, when the Devils got the first overall pick, which ended up being Nico Hischier, I decided to come back, heavy and get like super into it again, dive, headfirst into it. And I followed all these people on Twitter, and it ended up taking up my whole timeline. Like my friends and my family like weren't even like I wasn't even seeing their posts anymore. It was all just like, hockey journalists and other teams and stuff. So I ended up in about a year ago, a little over a year ago, deciding, okay, well, when the Devils post and I see like these like fake like for fun accounts like Pavel Zaka fan and Nico Hischier supporter or whatever it is. I was like, they look like they're having fun. Like, let me join in on that fun. So I started the Brat Pack. It was really just to have one Twitter for my personal stuff and one Twitter to follow hockey stuff. So I followed all the hockey people on the Brat Pack, and I just wanted to be part of the community. I just wanted to be like another face in the crowd of Devils Twitter. And it's crazy that some of the tweets have kind of gained the attention that they have, but I really just wanted a Twitter to follow hockey. Like, and this is not like an attempt at being a content creator or whatever. Like, I just wanted to keep my friends on one profile and hockey on another profile. So kind of just came together.
And as like you talk about like it kind of came all together out of nowhere. Like it was just a personal side thing for you. Like was there a point like as like you started to like become more the community that you realized like, oh shoot, like I'm making waves, like I'm a core like lead part of Devil's Twitter.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's been a couple different times like along the way that I've come to like kind of different milestones in it. Um there was honestly really early on, I jumped from like 600 followers to like 1500 followers in like a week or two, and I was just like, "Oh my god, like what's happening?" Like, okay, like this is starting to catch on in a weird way. And looking back, I was, 1500 was like nothing like compared to, what's going on now. Um and even at that, like when it when like the follower count started to go up and stuff, like I said, my goal was really just to be, another face in the crowd of Devil's Twitter. I just wanted to be a member of the community. So, you know, I really even now try my best to kind of just like, wing it and be myself and like post whatever I think is funny and whatever, like talk to all the same friends that I'm still talking to kind of thing. But there's been a couple things along the way where I've been able to like look back and be like, all right, like this is really cool. Like this kind of opportunity doesn't usually kind of pop up for everyone. And I understand that. Like, and I know we're going to get to like talking about the group outing and stuff like that. Like, I totally understand that that was like a 1 in a million shot that like, not everyone who makes a hockey burner Twitter is just going to get to go do. So there have been like certain kind of steps along the way that I have, had those little moments. But even now, like, I just want to be a part of the group.
Yeah, and you mentioned how you kind of wanted to make the Brat Pack as like this separate entity away from like your personal stuff. But
Mhm.
at what point did like your close friends and family find out about this account, and who like
Yeah.
was the first person to find out?
So my girlfriend at the time, now fiance, she knew about it the whole time. And there were two like hometown friends that, you know, we had talked and that they helped me kind of like decide to make the account. So I have these two buddies that like anytime anything happens with the Brat Pack, like I immediately go text them and like they've been in on it like literally from day one. Um, but it really wasn't till it started to like really gain some attention and like when the idea of like making shirts or something came up is when I started posting it on like my personal socials. And like there's been a few times where I posted on my like my personal Instagram story being like, hey, this is really cool that, Kevin Weeks mentioned me this week. Like I think that's awesome. And I've had like a friend be like, oh my God, like you're the Brat Pack account, like I had no idea. Like so some of my friends are still figuring it out. But my close friends that I talk hockey with, they all know. They all like are kind of in on the joke of it, and they all think it's hilarious and it's a lot of fun for us to talk about.
That's really awesome to hear. And now we'll switch a little bit more to the Devils part of it, where
Yeah,
you've been following Jesper Bratt throughout his whole career. So this is kind of a two-parter. So the first part is, I mean, you mentioned like you saw the Pavel Zacha burner accounts, and there's so many,
yeah.
even today. You've honestly started even more of a movement with even more of these Devils and other teams' accounts.
Oh yeah, there's a million.
So why exactly at that time did you pick him, first of all? And then second,
Yeah,
just talk about the evolution that you've seen from him. And obviously, being a sixth round pick in,
right.
2016, 2017, like just as a fan, you've been able to watch him. Just talk about your experience of just watching him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the reason I attached myself to him was really really specific, and I love telling the story because of that. Because I had one of the friend I just referenced actually. That's I kind of created the account with him knowing about it. He used to work for the team, and he worked for the team at the time that Jesper was drafted. So I remember like halfway through training camp, or maybe even like day one of preseason or whatever it was, he texted me and was just like, "You need to keep an eye on this like Brat kid. Like I think he's actually going to make this team." And being a 6th round pick to make the team out of your first camp is like virtually unheard of. Like it just doesn't happen. So he was like, keep an eye on the kid. Like he's gonna make the team. It'll be cool, whatever. So I went to a preseason game that year, and I like absolutely fell in love with his game. My previous favorite player before him was Patrick Eliash, and I love creative wingers. Who are like I said, creative with the puck, have good edge work on their skating abilities, and I saw a lot of that in Jesper. So I kind of just attached myself real early and was just like, hey, if I'm getting in on the ground floor here, like let's just see what happens. And so I finally looked into him more as a person, just out of curiosity to see what I was getting into. And one of the things that really, really caught my attention was as a 6th round pick blossoming into the NHL player he was, the difference maker in his opinion, in his words, was that he started seeing a sports psychologist, before and after games. And I'm a really, really big mental health advocate. I work in the field myself, so it's something that's really important to me. And so to have a player who believes in mental health, maintenance and advocacy, tough word, sorry about that. To have a player that like really truly believes in that and lives it every day, I was like, all right, this is the guy. Like this is my guy. I'm gonna attach myself to him. I got his jersey in the first month of his rookie season. And I mean, that's 2017. So I didn't actually create the Brat Pack account till 3 years later. So I had been a in-person Jesper Bratt fan for about 3 years before even getting on Twitter. So, or hockey Twitter at least. So it's been a long journey, but I'm really, really happy to see him, blossoming into the player that I personally thought he could be this whole time.
So I mean, obviously we know the brat love. It's everybody knows. Um, but like I'm gonna use this as a pivot point to get into a broader conversation topic. I mean, like especially now with how the team's been playing, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Is there anybody else, like any other player on the team that like they're not gonna top Brat, but like someone that like you've got pinned as like a nice B player? Like maybe you'll make another burner account and it'll be for another player.
You
Is there
know,
another favorite player you got?
I've thought about that because there was a lot of talk this past offseason, where there's some contract negotiation troubles with Jesper, and I'd probably get 5 to 10 tweets per day being like, well, what are you going to do if and when he leaves? Like, are you going to become the Palat pack? Are you going to become the Jack pack? Are you going to become, I don't know, the Hughes crew or whatever, every single day. And I've kind of made the decision that, especially now that I've kind of put myself more out there on the account, I think the Brat Pack, begins and ends with Jesper Bratt. I don't think I would, transition to another player if anything were to ever happen. I don't know what I would do, but I don't think I would create, a similar profile there. The and I know this is kind of a cop out answer because he was a first overall pick. So first overall picks are expected to be superstars. But watching Nico Hischier this season has been really, really special. I think he and I've told this story a few times on other podcasts and spaces. So if anyone's listening and has heard it before, I apologize. But there was a moment last year, it was in Dallas where Nico Hischier had this goal, and you guys may remember it, where he held the puck in the offensive zone for like 45 seconds, just kind of skating around, and he, decided to charge towards the goal, absolute awesome goal he scored. And it looked like something clicked in his head where it was just like, hey, I don't have to be the guy that passes to superstars anymore because I am the superstar. Like, I can just score these goals. And honestly, since that game, every game since, at the end of last season and into the start of this season, I think he's shown that same confidence and that same, caliber of play. So I'm really, really having a ton of fun watching him. And again, I know that's an easy answer because he's the captain and he's a number one pick, but I love stories and I love guys that, overcome things or I've used the word blossom like 4 times already, but blossom into, the player that we all think they can be. So I think he's got something special going on. My eyes been on him this season.
And speaking of special performances, I mean the Devils, their past 12 games have just been amazing. I mean, you talk about what they've done. They beat the defending Stanley Cup champions in the Avalanche. They go to Western Canada, sweep that trip. They go to Eastern Canada, sweep that trip. What are your thoughts on this Devils 12-game win streak, and like what has really stood out to you during this stretch?
You know, the biggest takeaway from this win streak so far, and hey, it's technically not over yet. We'll see how far it goes, but I think the biggest takeaway has been that it's for real. That these guys are playing the hockey that they really should be playing, and it's paying off rather than getting lucky 12 times in a row or outplaying what they're supposed to be playing 12 times in a row or whatever. Because there's been, the past few years, Buffalo went on a 10-game win streak. I know Philadelphia went on a 10-game win streak. And there were times where even during the win streak, it was like, well, these guys are, getting really lucky. Streaks happen. They're going to come back down to earth. They're still not that good. But I think the biggest takeaway for these Devils is this is the team that we expected to, be here the past couple or form into the past couple of years. Whereas this could have been them last year if they had good goaltending. And that really, really sent them down a huge fluke of a year. But to see them come out like this, it looks like they belong. There was um, a moment during the Toronto game where I realized it was just like, I don't care if they win or lose. They look like they belong playing against this team. And, there are going to be games that they lose, they're not going to win, 70 games to finish out the season, but they look like they belong against these good teams. So that's my biggest takeaway. And, now that they're 11 games above 500, they don't have to win, 10 games in a row on stretches. They can play, 550 hockey the rest of the way and still probably make the playoffs. So they're putting themselves in a really good spot, and it looks like they're for real.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up a lot of good points there from this entire win streak. Just the fact that they belong at this point with these, upper echelon teams in the NHL, even against the Avalanche. But I want to focus now on that Arizona Coyotes game where you
Yeah,
guys had the group outing. So I just have a couple of, this is another two-parter. So
sure.
first, I just wanted to hear your just overall thoughts and emotions of the day. And there were also rumors. I mean, Ryan Novozinski's a friend of the podcast as well, and at
Oh, word.
WSOU,
Awesome.
he was the one who recorded the crowds chanting "Sorry, Lindy."
Oh, yeah.
So you want to hear the whole backstory with that? Like, were you guys
Yeah,
actually the section that started that, and were there any prior
absolutely.
discussions before that?
Yeah. So the Sorry Lindy chant specifically, I had been getting tweets again, like multiple per day for like a week leading up to that game of when are we starting the sorry Lindy chance? When are we starting the re-sign Lindy chance? Like when are we gonna do it? And I actually went to the game so before Saturday they played Thursday against Ottawa. And people were actually talking about doing the sorry Lindy chance then against Ottawa. And I mean, obviously I didn't have like, the whole group with me. I was just at the game. I was like, okay, if someone else starts it, I'll join in, but I'm not going to start it. So I actually expected it to happen that Thursday game, but it didn't. So we get to Saturday, and there's about 200 of us spread across like 4 sections or maybe 5 sections, and there was a guy behind me, and I don't remember his name. Had a fair amount to drink that night. Um, but this guy was an absolute animal in starting chants. He was just going all night, and I loved it. And I was just like, it was me and him kind of just ripping it. And when people started joining in, we got kind of comfortable in it. And I was like, okay, well, if we start doing these chants, like people are joining us, like let's just go for it. So it was actually the guy behind me, I think, that started it. I don't think I said it first, but he said it once and I joined in, and then everyone else started joining in. But it did come out of our section. Yeah, we did start it. It was an absolute group effort. The whole Brat Pack group joined in the moment we started it. So shout out to Ryan for recording it. That's awesome. I honestly did not expect the reaction we've gotten to it. I thought it was just a fun little thing that Devils fans did at a game. I didn't expect like, national pundits to being like, "Oh my god, this is like groundbreaking stuff that we've never seen before." So that was really unexpected, but the whole night was absolutely insane. It like looking back, it feels like an absolute fever dream of a night because start to finish, everything that could have like gone 50-50 went right. Like there were moments that like this can go right or wrong and we'll see what happens, and every single one went right. Starting from the beginning, we did pregame at a bar across the street, and they did like drink specials for us and like created drinks whatever. And part of me was prepared for no one to show up and for this bar to think I was like an absolute fraud that brought no one, and what a waste. But everyone showed up. You couldn't even get in the door. Like it was packed. Like people were literally like, I mean, they didn't have a person at the front turning people away, but like people were walking up, seeing how packed it was, and just walking away. It was so packed. They ran out of the drinks that they were offering to us like a half hour before we left. Like it was, you know, um, I ran into Jesper Bratt's parents at the bar. I met them and was like, "What are you guys doing here? That's awesome." And they straight up were like, "We heard about like the Bratt like fan group that was going to be here and we wanted to come see it." And I was like, "Oh my god, like okay." So meeting them, the game hadn't even started yet and I was already on like cloud 9. We get in the game and it's just like, "Okay, cool. Schmid's in net. Who knows? We might lose like 6-1. Like we're on a huge winning streak, but this is going to be the game that we lose like 6-1, right?" Absolutely not. They win the game 4-2, commanding win. Again, something that could have gone either way. Absolutely went amazing. The chants were amazing. People were showing up with signs and like cardboard cutouts and starting chants, and it was just so much fun. Like just pure wholesome fun. And then after the game, we did the picture on the ice where, again, no one could have showed up. I could have gone down there just by myself with my fiance and been like, well, this was fun. But again, like all 200 people showed up, and it was a huge, huge crowd. Everyone absolutely having a great time. And I had actually been told maybe 2 days before that they had invited Jesper Bratt to come out on the ice with us, and that it was approved. I guess they have to go through like so many channels and different people that have to approve things for stuff like that to happen. So they told me on Thursday before the Saturday that it got approved. But even then, if he gets hurt during the game, or if they lose and he's not in a great mood, like, it's very possible that he was not going to come out. So for him to come out and for it to go as well as did, the people had the 8 more years chant going. I didn't start that. I didn't know that was going to happen. I honestly, I don't remember it happening. When I watched the video going back, I heard it, and people were doing it. In the moment, I had no idea that it was happening. I was so like locked in, focused on like talking to Jesper himself, that like, if you ask me if that chant happened, I would have said no. Like, and there's video evidence, but I didn't even hear it. And he was amazing. He was so nice. He was so appreciative. He genuinely seemed to think that it was really, really cool what we were doing. And again, like, that's another thing, like 50-50 shot. Like, maybe he's just like, oh, cool, thanks. But he seemed like really, really stoked on it, like genuinely. So that made me really happy. So everything went right the whole night. I really like, I can't wait for the next one. We got to go bigger and better for the next one.
Well, this next question now is gonna seem like a big letdown after that, because I mean, I was gonna ask, I mean, outside of maybe this season, obviously, outside of that night, are there any other just like big like favorite memories that you've had like with either the Brat Pack or just like Devils fandom in general? Like anything that sticks
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, you know what? There's been a few. The 2018 playoffs against Tampa. I remember how they're having like a huge festival in Championship Plaza before the game. Um, Opening night this year. That was actually a really special one for me, not only because it was absolutely packed and it was a party and everyone was having fun and that stuff, but I'm friends with a band called Silverstein, and actually, if you are in WSOU, you probably know them. But they the Devils are using their song for like the pregame video package this year. So for the home opener, they flew them out, or they didn't fly them out, but they hosted them and put them up in a box, food and drink and stuff. And they invited me as their guest, so I got to go hang out with Silverstein and watch the game. And it was the home opener, so it was like another big packed one. We participated in the Fire Lindy chants. So I was there for both the Fire Lindy chants and the Sorry Lindy chants. Um, but that one was a really fun one. And like I said before, a lot of my really early memories are the Stanley Cup games in 01 and 03. I think like one of my true like earliest memories of like really being a Devils fan was going to the home opener in 2004 when they won the cup and they did like the cup ceremony, before the game. And we were sitting by the tunnel where I think it was Scott Stevens brought the cup, like, back to the locker room or wherever it was going. And, I was right over the railing, like reaching over, touching it and stuff. So there's been so many times of just like pure happiness and being Devils fan, and there's been so many times of pure sadness being a Devils fan. But the Brat Pack has brought a lot of it around the other side, where even when we're losing and even when we're not having fun, like, Devils Twitter has been a really good time, and it's been a lot of fun. We make comedy out of the sadness. So, you know shout out to the Devils Twitter community in general, because like, no matter what happens, like, we've been having so much fun there lately.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously when you made Brat Pack, you said it was just like this was something for fun to get involved with, like just involved in hockey Twitter. And I assume you probably couldn't even imagine what's going on with it. I mean, the whole thing in Arizona, over
Yeah, no.
10,000 followers now. Is there any goals or future goals or aspirations you have for the account? Or are you just kind of riding the wave and see where it takes you?
No, I have zero goals. Not one. My stance on the account has been the same, you know, and maybe I should have said this before, with the benchmark question, but um my policy once the account started to get attention is do whatever is fun for everyone else. If people want me to do something that makes it fun for everyone else, I'll do that thing. So like, we do the acronym shirts, the t-shirts. I didn't want to sell t-shirts. It's a lot of work for me. I don't particularly enjoy it, but other people wanted it. I was getting hit up all the time, like, when are we getting the t-shirts? Like, you gotta make them. Like, come on, like, we would love to like wear those around the arena or whatever. So I got essentially bullied into it. So everything I do, especially with the group outings, like the group outings are also a lot of work, but it was so much fun, and it was so much fun for everyone. So when I get like messages or tags like after being like, hey, this is the most fun I've ever had a Devils game, or hey, I brought my kid and this was their first game and going on the ice was like a dream to them. Like, okay, yeah, then I'm going to keep doing that. So my only goal with the account is just do whatever's fun for everyone and whatever helps everyone else have a good time.
Well, we are very excited to see what the Brad Pack will be up to next. But that'll wrap up this edition of Devils in the Details. Once again, huge thank you to the Brad Pack, our special guest today. Thank you for being on and joining us tonight. Thank you to Joe Matthews and Ryan Henry for being great co-analysts and signing off. I'm Jonathan Height. Be sure to stay tuned in to all of our Devils coverage. The Devils will be looking for lucky number 13 tomorrow night against the Edmonton Oilers at home against Connor McDavid. But for now, have a great night.